everyone, welcome back to the workshop. I don't know, I don't want to call it class. So I guess from now on we will call it a learning workshop where we learn together. So today I want to share to you guys about so essentially I just want to share to you guys about whatever I know that I have learned as an artist for like a few years, and I just want to tell you guys about my methods and whatnot, and then all those you can watch all those disclaimers on introduction videos on YouTube. So let's start with what we're gonna learn today. So today's episode is all about value. And what value means? Value means essentially value just a light and shadows. I can't even spell, guys, I'm sorry. So value is very important to give shape to some object. For example, if I draw a circle, right? If I draw a circle like this, I don't mind my method of drawing circle. If I draw a circle, like everyone know this is a circle, but once I input some values into it, let's just say I want to do that, and then I want to do this. You see, now the circle looks more like a sphere, right? Because value, essentially, the function of a value is to give dimensions to whatever shapes you have. If I have, for example, let's say if I have a pole, maybe just like that, right? So most people will be like, that's a rectangle, nothing special about that one. But what if I do this? It's way too dark. Okay, what if I do this to this shape? See? Now it looks like a cylinder, right? So essentially, the function of a value is just to give shapes to your objects and to give them dimensions so that you can see the overall shapes of what you're trying to draw. It works for everything really. When you draw something like a face, maybe like a head, and then you put some values into it, now suddenly it looks like a realistic head. You can see the creaks and all that kind of stuff on that specific shapes. You can see where the eyes is kind of like sunken in a little bit, and then you see like the cheek like puff out, and then the mouth just like curve in and all that kind of stuff. Those shapes were determined by values. You can draw it as in 2D, but it is so hard to make a 2D drawing looks like 3D. It is easier to give those drawing a much more defined shapes just by giving them depth values and whatnot. And so that's what we're gonna learn today. We're gonna learn about values. So let me just delete all of this. And what is value actually, you ask? I know value is something that give shapes to something, but what is value? So value is actually essentially just a set of grayscale that goes from the lightest gray to the darkest gray. You can say values can be any colors, but to make things a lot more simple, black and white, because black and white is really easy to work with, and it is a neutral color, right? So it doesn't mix with any colors to create this color. This is an alpha, or like a neutral color, so it doesn't really create it by mixing other colors and whatnot, and it fits with every color essentially. So if you draw something in this kind of values, and then you input colors into it to give it a little bit more identity, it can accept those colors very easily because they are very neutral. Black to white variations are very neutral, and gray and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's what we're gonna learn today about values, light and shadows. So for more different examples, let's just say we'll work on like sphere before. Let's just break down the sphere a little bit. Okay, so we have a shape of a sphere. But then you asked me, Chuck, what the hell is those shapes? So this shape is called planes. The shapes you have that I have right here, this stupid ass shape, it's called planes. So essentially, every shape, no matter how complicated it is, it has certain planes. It has planes on it, like your face, your head. They have planes on it, even though it's so organic, it's so round, it's so like soft edges and all whatnot. It still have planes. You can break it down. You can break the planes down. That's what we learned from last week's lesson, which is the construction practice, where you essentially studies a very dynamic and very complex shapes, and then you break it down to its bare bones. Means like you break it down to its simplest shape. It is pretty much the same. We have we have a very rounded and very like smooth circle, or like in this case sphere, right? But to be able to understand these shapes properly, and to be able to understand the values within these shapes properly, you have to break it down. And essentially that's what it means by you having all these planes. You break this shape down, the complexity of these shapes down into a series of planes. Why I'm using this plane is because it's much easier to actually explain to people how values work, and also because it is very fundamental for you to know how to simplify your shapes. Every single big artist that I learn from, whenever I draw something very complex and I ask for a critic, they always say, okay, the first thing you need to do is break down your shapes. Just make a simple shapes. Whenever you want to draw a pose, whatever pose you have in mind, break it down to its simplest form, so you can control. You have the ability to control all of the shapes the way you want. Because when you work with a complex shape, and then you try to alter those shapes, it requires a lot more brain power. So most of the time, artists will be like, yeah, you have to break it down first. You have to deconstruct that complex shape to its simplest form, and then you can play with them. You know, you can pose them differently. It's much easier to play with simple stuff because you can experiment to it, and it takes less time. So that is why I also we got off tangent a little bit, but yeah, you get what I mean. That's why we break down those spheres to a simple planes. So let's just say on this ball over here, right, we have a light source. It's coming from here. Let's just say we have a light source coming from here, like shot directly on top of this sphere. Okay, so before we get into the light and shadows, what we have to know about values is there is a two type of values. I mean, we have three type of values in two groups. So we have light values and we have shadows value. So in light values, we have the most like brightest values, and we also have midtones in light value, and then shadows is just shadow. And for shadows, we have to break it, shadows down into two. So for shadows, we have two types of shadows. It's going to get a little bit confusing, but it will make sense later. So first is cast shadows. So cast shadows, what is cast shadows? Let's just say you have a coin over here, and then the light source is hitting right on top of the coin, and then you will have a shadows like below the coin, right? So let's say this is a floor. You will have this shadow. So this shadows is called cast shadow. It is the shadow that is manipulated by the not manipulated but created by the obstructions of the light within a specific object. So it has the shape of whatever objects that were blocking the light. So that is cast shadow. We also have form shadows. What is form shadow? Now this is a little bit hard to explain, but let's just say we have this plane over here. So this plane have shapes to it, right? It's like curved down, and let's say we have lights hitting here. So your lights will be around here. It's going to be your lights, but then this part over here start to details away from the light, right, and go into a shadows. So it will get like a little bit darker, and then when it comes to where the part of the lights can't even hit them anymore, they will become the shadows. So this specific planes over here, where we call it like transition area, where those shapes are like curving away from the lights. At first you have the light, and then because the light is traveling in a straight line, it cannot catch up with how the shape of the planes works. So it can't really, the lights can't really shine through that area, but it still also have a little bit of light to it. So this area over here is called a form shadow. This shadow was created because of the shifting form of a plane, right? So in those in mind, shadows, cast shadows, form shadows, and light and shadows value. With that in mind, choose two values. Let's make it more simple. I will explain to how to input midtones in a little bit, but to make things way simpler, just choose the lightest value that you feel that you can find on this grayscale bar over here, and let's just color the part that's been hit by the light, right? So this area over here. And this area over here. And okay, these shapes right here is a little bit hard to determine because it is starting to details away from the light. But like I said, to make it simple, let's just do it alike for now. And then we have a shadows area, which is a part where the lights cannot really reach. So this part over here, that's too dark. This part over here. I remember when I say when I was talking about cast shadows, the shadows will take the shapes of whatever object that obstructs the lights, right? So essentially on the floor right here, you will have a cast shadow of the balls. It took the shapes of the balls. So from the top, if you look at this like shadows from the top, it will look like a circle, right? Because it took the shape of the spear. But because the floor is flat, so it translated as 2D. If the floor is like curved, it will be a little bit more complicated, because it will have its own like form shadows. But we don't want to talk about complicated stuff for now. Let's just make and keep it as simple as possible. So remember when I said light, there's like a two type of values that you have to know. There's like light and shadows, and then there's like two tone on the shadows, right? I mean in the light source area, and there's like two type of shadows. So this remember when I said this area that are going to be a little bit complicated, because we don't know exactly how the light hits on this area, because it's like it was hit by the light, but it moved out, it started to like curve out from the light source itself. So let's just pick some mid-tone. Mid-tone means, like, remember I said it's a lot closer to light than dark. It's not lit, it's not like mid, it's not like in the middle of the grayscale bar. It's like around this area. It's a lot closer to light than to dark, because it's still being hit by the lights in that sense. And then with that, we just take this part over here that look confusing at first, but now we know that this part is a form shadows kind of area. So this is where the midtones will live. Alright, so now you have a very solid value. Right, now the shape of the sphere is looking, it looks like a sphere now. If I turn off these lines over here and ignore that, if you can ignore this inexistent line, or probably let me just do this. So if I flatten out everything, right? Bit more simple. Now you can actually see the shapes of the sphere itself. And once you understand how this works, you can pretty much play around with it. And now you have these shapes right now. You can just, smoothen out the contrast part. Now, even though without the guidance of the lines, you can clearly see. I mean, it's not like well smoothed out or like well smudged, because I don't really want to spend a lot of time just smudging this shit. So you can see now the shape of the sphere. You can clearly see the shape of here. So this is much a simple explanation how value works. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's just say you have a head, right? So this head in particular is very is unique, because I break down this head from a very complicated kind of shape of a head, because human's head is very, very natural, right? It's very what's the word? It's very, oh my god, explaining things is so hard. It's very dynamic, right? So it is much harder than the sphere. Okay, but we can use this as a guidance, or like as a practice, how to actually how values work on various planes and whatnot. So essentially, when we talk about head, we have a lot of planes, a lot of shapes, and I break it down. I break the complexity of the head to its like simplest shape that I can find, or at least as simple as possible, for essentially for us to kind of like work more on the value than the complexity of the shape itself. Okay, so let's say on this head A over here, which one is A? This one is A. So in this head A over here, the light source coming from here, right? So with that knowledge that you just learned from doing the spheres, take the lightest color and just paint everything that you think being hit by the color, by the light, I mean. For now, don't really think about mid-tone. Just try to keep it simple as like two tone for now, light and dark, light and shadows, and try to keep it that way for now. Okay, now decide where the lights was not hit by decide where planes does not hit by the lights using the darker values, like this area over here. So one thing to note though, even though this shape is simple enough for you to just like fill in the colors itself like that, you also have to think about like how it works in reality. So the shape of the light was dictated by the shape of the cast shadows, I mean, was dictated by the whatever shapes that obstruct the light, right? Like the coin example that I just gave in the beginning. So these shapes over here was dictated by the shapes of the chin, because the light is coming from here. So essentially, the shapes of the shadows, the cast shadows, will be moving towards those kind of shape, like these chins kind of shape. If you think of this face as a 3D element, I think you will understand a little bit better. But everything is just about practice. If you practice a lot on how to determine all that kind of stuff, it will be easy in the future. Like this area, this nose area right here, because of the nose kind of like obstruct the light, so the shadows, the cast shadow will be the cast shadow shape will be determined by the shape of the nose, which is this area over here. Okay, now we have the two values, right? Now we have to start thinking about the mid-tone, where the light was specifically not really being hit by the light. It being hit by the light, but it starts to stray away from the light, right? So let's pick the mid-tone, which is a lot closer to the light, remember that? And just try to fill in where do you think the plane starts shifting away from the light source. Means like it's not being hit directly. This area over here. This right area over here, because it start to move away more of the like the plane start to facing downwards more than upwards, but it's not really as down as possible, so you can still see a bit of light hitting by those shapes. on those chips, I mean. So yeah, now you have a very solid values to this head right now. Let's make another example, since we have two head here for whatever reason. So let's say we have head B, and the light is hitting right from the above here, like from his forehead. Let's just say that. So as usual, just take the lightest values that you can find, and then just fill in every space that you think is being hit by the light. It is essentially the same process over and over again. It's just like a different kind of situations. So this is the practice that you need to do like constantly for you to understand the whole variations that we can create when it comes to lights and shadows. Because like I said, shapes that exist in this world is not particularly simple. Most of the shapes are very, very complex, but with the knowledge of, like, you know, deconstruction and construction and the understanding of the value, you can break it down to its simplest form and actually make a decent illustration of those complex shapes. And now it's time for like dark shadows. Where do you think that it doesn't been hit by the lights? There. And then lastly, the midtone. Think about, as usual, those planes that are kind of like transitioning or like curving away from the lights. It is the same thing all over again. It's over here, since it's like curving away, because the light is coming from his forehead, remember? So it's more like from his front kind of face than directly on top. And now because the light is more of like on his forehead, the shadows will be cast under the nose like that. Excuse me. So if you implement this into your practice, just try to do the deconstruction and constructions practice, and then try to do this on each of those shapes. I'm pretty sure you will understand the whole concept of how to do values, how to draw in general. Now you can draw simple shapes and values. Even a complex shape and values like this head piece, right? If you know how to deconstruct properly and deconstruct the shapes and the planes properly, and then you know how to use the values properly, you can pretty much draw the thing that I draw right now. So that's all it. That's a caveat. That's a practice over there. That's essentially what values or light and shadows is. So let's recap a little bit. Values means like light and shadows, and what that means, those values is by the simple colors of or like the simple variance of colors from black to white. It's not colors, it's grayscale. I'm sorry, it's a various shades of grayscale from the brightest to the darkest part, and that essentially is a value of something. Where's my balls? Okay. So I think if you just pay attention on how to essentially deconstruct something and construct something, and then pay attention on how the light source works and how the values work in general, it's pretty easy for you to determine determine the initial part of the drawing, because honestly this is just fundamental, but understanding the fundamentals is what's important in art. If you don't understand the fundamentals, if you don't you can't really tweaks it the way you want. Like some artists once told me, to be able to bend the rules, you need to understand the rule itself. You need to know what it is. So yeah, you have to learn the fundamental first. I know it looks tedious, I know it looks stupid, you just want to go out and just draw some sick-ass anime shit, right? But just learn about fundamental first. Those people who be able to draw, sick-ass anime also go to art school. They also draw a fucking naked Da Vinci's drawing and shit, how to learn about proportion and whatnot. They all go through that. They all go through the fundamental. It's not like you sit on your desk and all of a sudden just be able to draw some hentai, alright? It doesn't work like that. So yeah, understand the fundamentals, and this is the fundamentals. And if you understand on these values, light and shadows, you can pretty much shape your own drawing as however you want, however the light situation is, however the shape of your drawing is. Just and essentially you can create a good values of drawing. A good drawing comes with a good value, or like a good value makes the drawings good. If you learn, if you study a lot of professional artists' work, for example, I'll just pick any artist that draw like, realistic painting and all that kind of stuff. Try to grayscale that drawing and then try to crank the contrast up, and you can see the fundamentals of that drawing is essentially this. It is essentially the simple 3-tone, or sometimes they use a simple 2-tone. So yeah, because those are fundamentals. Even professional artists use it, so why don't you use it, right? So yeah, that's it for today from me. I'm so sorry if my explanation is a little bit, a little bit weird because explaining things is very hard. I'm still trying to get better at that, but I hope the visualizations that I draw over here is enough for you to understand what I means by whatever I was talking about by value, lights and shadows. And for that, I thank you so much for listening and watching. If you find these videos helpful, leave a like. So this kind of content usually was streamed every Friday. So I start streaming like around 7 a.m. PST. But the class won't start until the middle of the stream. So yeah, whenever you jump in within 6 hours of my stream, you will be able to catch it. But if not, the videos will be up on like Sunday or something like that. But yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you guys. See you guys in the next video.